One day they were astonished to find themselves greeted in English by an Abenaki Indian whose name was Somerset. He stayed with them for 2 days and then left, returning a few days later with Tisquanto, also known as Squanto, a member of the Pawtuxet tribe who was fluent in English. Squanto was fluent in English because he had been captured by an English sea captain several years earlier and sold into slavery in England, but had escaped and finally returned to Massachusetts on an exploratory expedition. When he finally returned to his native village, near present-day Plymouth, he found most of the population had died of diseases, probably as a result of the European contact. Squanto was a godsend for the settlers. He taught them how to grow corn, how to avoid poisonous plants, how to get maple sap from trees, and how to fish in the rivers. The settlers were on the verge of starvation, and they owed their survival to Squanto. He served as interpreter for the colonists for 2 years, and he ultimately died here in Chatham. Squanto also negotiated a peace treaty between the English settlers and Massasoit, the sachem or chief of the Wampanoags. Massasoit was eager to make peace with the settlers, for about 80% of the Wampanoags had died a few years earlier in an outbreak of smallpox, and Massasoit feared they could be taken over by the Narragansetts. A large statue of Massasoit stands near Plymouth Rock today. After the first corn harvest proved successful in the fall of 1621, Governor William Bradford organized a feast at which the Wampanoags were present. The sole account of this event which survives is a few sentences in a letter from one of the settlers, Edward Winslow. Now, the Wampanoags have plenty of oral history, but this was not considered a very significant event to them, so they haven't captured it in their oral history. So we have it, the only surviving account is from the settlers' point of view. So here's the few sentences in which Edward Winslow describes what happened. Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men hunting wild fowl so that we might have a special celebration together after we had brought in our crops. These 4 in one day killed as much wild fowl that it and some other food served the community almost a week. At that time, along with other recreations, we practiced shooting our muskets. Many of the Wampanoag came to the town, including their leader Massasoit, with about 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted. And they went out and killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation and presented to Governor Bradford and Captain Standish and others. Although food is not always as plentiful as it was at that time, yet by the goodness of God we are so far from starvation that we often wish you could share our plenty. Unquote. Well, this account should puncture a few of our treasured myths. There's no evidence the feasters ate cranberry sauce. And the fowl mentioned may have been turkey, but maybe not. There were probably more Indians than settlers, and the feast lasted 3 days. So there was some kind of meal. And the particular peace between the Plymouth settlers and the Wampanoags apparently lasted for 50 years. But it is one bright ray in a sorry mass of darkness. I want to add to this a short excerpt from a piece we read last year at Thanksgiving, which has a Chatham connection. Frank James was a talented Chatham musician and a Wampanoag who took on the title Wamsuto. Though James was the first Native American graduate of the New England Conservatory, he could not get a job in an orchestra because of race prejudice, and spent a lot of his career as head of the music department at Nauset Regional High School, where our own Frank Copa taught under him. Some of you probably knew him. I'm sure that many of you in the audience knew. In 1970, the committee planning the 350th anniversary celebration of the landing at Plymouth Rock asked the Wampanoag to send a speaker to the ceremony, and they chose Frank James. But when the organizers saw what Frank was planning to say, they would not let him speak. Frank and his allies went on to designate this holiday as a national day of mourning, and at one point they took some more direct action against Plymouth Rock itself. Here's a little of what Frank James was going to say on that occasion 40 years ago. It is with mixed emotion that I stand here to share my thoughts. This is a time of celebration for you, celebrating an anniversary of a beginning for the white man in America, a time of looking back, of reflection. It is with a heavy heart that I look back on what happened to my people. Even before the Pilgrims landed, it was common practice for explorers to capture Indians, take them to Europe, and sell them as slaves for 220 shillings apiece. The Pilgrims had hardly explored the shores of Cape Cod. Pilgrims had hardly explored the shores of Cape Cod for 4 days before they had robbed the graves of my ancestors and stolen their corn and beans. Mort's relation describes the searching party of 16 men. Mort goes on to say that this party took as much of the Indians' winter provisions as they were able to carry. Massasoit, the great sachem of the Wampanoag, knew these facts, yet he and his people welcomed and befriended the settlers of the Plymouth plantation. Perhaps he did this because his tribe had been depleted by the epidemic, or his knowledge of the harsh oncoming winter was the reason for his peaceful acceptance of these acts. This action by Massasoit was perhaps our biggest mistake. We, the Wampanoag, welcomed you, the white man, with open arms, little knowing that it was the beginning of the end, that before 50 years would have passed, the Wampanoag would no longer be a free people. Unquote. What are we to do with this? Most of us here probably identify by ancestry with the Europeans, though some of you may have some Native American ancestry as well. But many of us sympathize viscerally with the Native Americans. We're thankful for this beautiful land we inhabit, but our gratitude must be mixed with compassion for the sufferings of the people for whom it was taken. The Europeans brought their guns, their germs, and their religion. And while the Indians in many places fought back, they were no match. How can we celebrate Thanksgiving with this in mind? I think a clue is offered by our reading this morning. Thanksgiving is, quote, not about being glad for the good things that have happened to us. They are simply moments in the sun. Thanksgiving is standing still with an injured and an open heart and letting the river run freely through us, unquote. Human history is full of tragedy, of injustice, of domination of one people by another, as our individual histories are full of losses, divorces, estrangements, disappointments. We look for a gratitude that is beyond the play of good or bad, that is deeper than gains and losses, that is not dependent on fortune. The force to which we give thanks is the creator and the destroyer. Living in gratitude is not a matter of turkeys or cranberry sauce, or justice or injustice. Living in gratitude is being open to all that is. As one of our hymns says, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. We must not ignore the atrocities of the past. They are part of the tapestry of our history, which make us who we are today. We give thanks for all of it. And we give thanks that we can come together in community to try to forge a more compassionate and just world for our children and grandchildren to live in. We are only a small number here in this meeting house, but we are grateful for that number. And we do what we can to build the beloved community where slavery and genocide and expropriation will not be practiced ever again. With grateful hearts for all that is our life, let us now turn to the communion.